Now on Coast TV News.
The vapor cloud is straight up north towards Market Street.
Hazmat incident, a chemical mishap at Perdue triggers a shelter-in-place in Georgetown. But alert error. Who got that shelter-in-place that shouldn't have? Question and confusion on the scene. What neighbors are worried about tonight?
This is Coast TV News at 11.
A hazmat at Perdue causing panic and confusion in Sussex County. Good evening. I'm Christina DeRobertis. Welcome to Coast TV News at 11. We begin tonight with new information on the chemical mishap. People in Georgetown and beyond were told to shelter in place after a chemical mix at the Perdue plant. This all happened around 4:40 p.m., again at the Perdue plant in Georgetown. Now, a spokesperson says a chemical supplier accidentally mixed two chemicals, and new tonight, DENREC confirms the chemicals were peracetic acid and sodium hydroxide. That created a smoke plume that has since dissipated. Now, people close to the plant were asked to stay indoors as the smoke may have caused dizziness, eye irritation, or nausea. And here is a look at the exact location if you're not familiar. The Perdue chicken plant is on Savannah Road in Georgetown. It's on the northeast side of town. Now, the shelter in place has since been lifted, and now we are learning more about what first responders faced when they got on the scene there. Joining us live from the scene is Brandon Ferguson. Brandon, you were there when this was all unfolding.
Christina, I'm less than a quarter mile away from the plant, and right now the air feels like a normal, crisp Georgetown night in January. And behind me, the scene right now is quiet, but it was the exact opposite earlier. Georgetown Fire Department officials, Sussex County officials, and even Georgetown Fire Department officials, they were going up and down this road. Crews on ATV-style vehicles were going towards the Perdue plant, and we spoke with firefighters who were first on the scene and described treating workers on scene.
4 workers that were in the immediate area were exposed to the chemicals and were treated at the scene and not transported to the hospital. They experienced eye irritation and some coughing.
Earlier, we were advised by Georgetown officials to wear a mask, and DENREC says this investigation is continuing. Live in Georgetown, Brandon Ferguson, Coast TV News.
Brandon, thank you for that. And we did speak with DENREC tonight, who says they tested pH levels and environmental conditions. While the shelter in place is lifted, DENREC says it has a response team stage and, quote, DENREC will continue to monitor the situation until we are fully confident there is no risk to plant workers or surrounding residents, end quote. The shelter-in-place alert that was broadcast all over the state, that was an error. DEMA says it accidentally sent the alert across the entire state when really it was only for people within a half-mile radius of the Perdue facility. That was later downgraded to just the homes next door and lifted about an hour and a half ago. And we learned more about this response by listening to 911 calls tonight. For example, according to dispatch, the tank involved was thousands of gallons, and a vapor cloud was reported going down Market Street. According to dispatchers, emergency responders had to be moved due to evacuating the area, and attempts were made to reach a daycare that's next door to the Perdue facility. And look, we know you guys have a lot of questions about this. So do we. So we will stay on top of this story and update you as soon as we can, as soon as we get more information. But again, to reiterate, the shelter in place, it has been lifted. Now, the mayor of Georgetown says a smell may linger, but it is all clear. And we've been updating you all night on our social media and our apps, and we have comprehensive coverage right now on coasttv.com. We're going to take a live look outside into Lewis, and the winds in Sussex County were a concern as this was all unfolding tonight. Our first alert chief meteorologist Paul Williams is going to join us now with a look at the weather. Paul, we were asking you about the wind conditions as this was unfolding.
Here we were, and what I'm doing right now, I'm zooming in a little bit tighter right now to kind of give you a feel as to what we were monitoring at the time of this particular story. You see, when you're talking about that kind of a situation, you're basically talking about the movement of a fog. And so that's why we began to kind of gauge what was happening with the surface winds. Well, we had that continuing to project itself coming from the northwest, sliding towards the southeast. So these are the residents that were to the southeast of this particular plant. That's where we had the shelter in place that was most vital because that small plume was going down the street like radiational fog traveling down the road. Now, wind gusts have been pretty steadily throughout Georgetown and then recently staying at about 21 miles per hour. So that's why we had such a concentrated effort and concern in that particular community. And we had a steady push coming in out of that part of the Delmarva Peninsula. Now, coming up, we're going to elaborate more on what's happening with the cold weather and the winter storm that's on the way. But we're glad to wrap a bow on this now that the shelter in place is now over.